Hey, we're live, pal.
All right, everybody. No fancy elevator music. No MMA chants. No,
That's the only part of the song I know. Oh, I should have given it some lyrics. I should have given it some lyrics.
Think about that for ahead of UFC 265, AK, because we are live. No bells and whistles. Kind of some bells and whistles. You see the fancy nameplates underneath us, but we are live for the People's Pre-Fight Show. And we're not just talking about one event. We're talking about two events. We got UFC Vegas 33, which is going to kick off at 6:30. What a day it has been for that card. We'll get into that in a moment. Bellator 263 kicks off with their preliminary card, which you can watch on MMAfighting.com at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And then it's just going to be an all-out extravaganza of mixed martial arts action. I am Mike Heck, joined by José Youngs. We got Alex K. Lee here. We got the whole trifecta. Casey is not with us right now. He is in Inglewood getting ready for Bellator 263. He will be in the building. We have lots of coverage from that event from behind the scenes. So, Jose, what a day it has been. We lost the co-main event once again. Ronnie Yaya, Kyung Ho Kang, no longer happening. I was told Trevin Jones, who lost his fight yesterday with Rodney Lawrence, he tried to jump in there and fight Kyung Ho Kang. It did not happen. It was kind of a little bit too late to make that happen. Nicholas Stolze, Jared Gooden was off the card as of like 3 or 4 hours ago, and then we found out like 2 hours ago that false positive or something, that they're cleared and good to go. So that fight is still happening. How would you describe this day as we are an hour away from this doubleheader kicking off?
Just another day in the wonderful world of mixed martial arts, because, AK, what do I always say? What do I always say?
A fight is not official until both men are in the cage.
Bingo.
And even
or
then,
women. Or women.
or women.
Man or woman need to be in the cage. Both of them need to be in the cage to fight. So just another day in mixed martial arts where fighters can weigh in and the fights don't happen. So I think the proper term is I'm just numb to it at this point. But if it's going to happen on any day, I'm glad it's happening today, because if you don't want, you got a lot of options to watch. You know, you're not just stuck watching one card ravaged with injuries and COVID. I don't want anyone to have COVID or get injuries, but I'd prefer it to be a day where you have multiple options and multiple fights you can tune into.
AK, how much did today push Bellator 263 forward? Like, it's hard to say. Like, I don't think anyone was celebrating like a positive COVID test and losing a fight. I don't think anyone's celebrating that, but just seeing the reaction on social media and whatnot, do you feel like Bellator 263 took another big leap forward in terms of card comparison, losing another co-main event today?
If for whatever reason you only have one monitor, I imagine most modern MMA fans will probably be keeping an eye on both cards. But if for some reason you can't, and when both cards are on, you're choosing to watch UFC Vegas 33 over Bellator 263, why? Why? I love the main event of UFC Vegas 33. I understand brand loyalty. The Bellator card is stronger. There's just more storylines kind of going into it. Like, there's a lot of fighters in there who I think we've talked about on previous shows are going to be big players in Bellator in the future. You could make that argument for some of the names on Vegas 33 as well, certainly. But I do think Bellator has clearly positioned this card to be this huge main event at the top, and then a bunch of entertaining, possibly some squash matches early on. Vegas 33, I'm not sure. It's kind of a mixed bag. So I understand, again, people love the UFC cards on a baseline are always going to deliver. You know, it's the biggest organization in the world. But if you only could watch one after everything that's happened, I would highly recommend Bellator 263. So that's sort of my take on how much further is Bellator ahead now. Like, if there was any doubt, this should be your choice. But again, I imagine most people will have a laptop set up and then watching on TV. So you don't have to choose. That's the beauty of it, right? Watch both if you can.
Flip back and forth. I think we have our 5th or 6th different and brand new co-main event for UFC Vegas 33. Cheyenne Bays versus Gloria DePaula, now the new co-main event for the evening. Jared Gooden, Nicholas Stolze, like we said, remains on the main card. Brian Barberina, Jason Witt. There you go. I mean, it's a card.
I want to say one thing about the Gooden Stolze thing. It's my understanding that it was not. I don't think it was a false positive, at least as far as the fighters go. It was neither fighter tested positive. but some breach of COVID-19 protocol. That's all the UFC officials are really saying. So it could have been someone from their team. Excuse me.
Yeah, right.
Someone from their team like making some sort of error, and it kind of linked back to the fight itself, and it got resolved. There was a clearance from a physician, so yes, that fight is back on. And by the way, there's someone in the comments, Mart Allen, who said, Jed is often my favorite voice / take / personality of the MMA fighting crew. Also, happy birthday, AK. So thank you for the happy birthday, but you are now banned.
Who's Jed?
Again, don't worry about Jose. Let's move on with the show.
Anyway,
he's just a guy. He's just a guy.
He's the man who suffered defeat once again on Between the Links on Thursday.
Shocker.
So if you guys are familiar with the show, this sort of we're going a little extra time because we had no idea when this UFC card was going to start. It's now at 6:30, so we're going to go a little extra. What time does Dana White's Contender Series start tonight? 6:30 Eastern. 6:30 Eastern. And then the Bellator prelims start at 7 Eastern. So get excited for that. You can watch that over at MMAfighting.com. So for those who are familiar with this, you already know what to do. Questions, thoughts, comments on either of these cards. And if you're new to this, it's your show. So leave your thoughts, your questions in the chat, and we will put them up on the screen, and we will address them.
And if you're in Canada, the entire Bellator prelims and main card, well, watch the prelims on MMAfighting.com, obviously. But the main card, free on YouTube. Just go to Bellator's YouTube. We don't have a TV deal up here, so Canadians, there's no reason not to have this card, the Bellator card, on somewhere. It is on YouTube. It's right there. It's very convenient to watch. So that's score a point for us up north.
And the rest of us here in the U.S. watch on Showtime, and they do offer a free trial. So check it out. If you don't have Showtime yet, you want to try it out, I think might be 10 days, maybe a month. I'm not sure, but there's a trial, so you can watch it for free. Which show has the best commentary tonight? Team Bisping or Team Big John? It's a tough question, man, because I geek out over Mauro Ranallo.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's just the man. I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but I think he's the GOAT as far as play-by-play. So I always sort of lean towards any team led by Mauro Ranallo. Although Brendan Fitzgerald is great at what he does too. Fitzgerald will have Felder and Bisping, and I'd probably just Mauro and Big John tonight. So
I prefer Mauro over all of them as a play-by-play individual, but I'm really happy that Michael Bisping is on the other side because he's trained with Sean Strickland, and of course this was his weight class that he was the champion with, and I'm sure he's at some point had some sparring session or ran in to Uriah Hall at a gym. So I'm always really glad when one of the commentary teams has first-hand experience training with one of the fighters or fighting, like when Dominic Cruz was the commentator for the Dillashaw Sandhagen. I thought he brought a lot of great insights. So I personally am happy that Bisping is on commentary tonight.
Yeah, and I kind of like the fact that Felder's on too because, and I know it's kind of a joke about this being a Contender Series card, but there are a lot of Contender Series alums on here,
Mm-hmm.
and Paul Felder and even Bisping called a couple of those. So these guys are both, and Brendan Fitzgerald as well has been linked to the Contender Series. So there's a lot of familiarity here. So you'll get some education on who these fighters are. What's your take on this, AK?
I'm Team Bisping all the way. I'm a big fan of Brendan Fitzgerald, and I think the mix of him and Felder and Bisping is always good. I think we know that some broadcasters, some of the analysts are better than others, depending on who they're working with. Like again, a bit just Bisping with Rogan, like Cormier with Rogan, for example. I always find really tough to listen to, but Cormier with someone else, a little who's less of a personality, I find is a little more controlled and better at doing the analysis part of the job. Which again, that's just me. I'm a boring person. Some people love that kind of frat boy energy that kind of materializes with certain groups, and that's cool. I'm not judging. Like I said, it just depends which style you like. So in this case, I think with the Team Bisping arrangement today, you get more of the analysis side of it, which, as you guys mentioned, on a card where a lot of the fighters might not be that well known, you're gonna get a lot of good information from Bisping and from Felder, and they're definitely the right group for a card like this, kind of this low key card. So for me, Team Bisping all the way.
There you go. Joseph Boza, I know people are hyping up Pitbull versus McKee today to be good. What if it's another Patricio mauling? Will there be any backlash? Patricio's 32-4 and 20-4 in Bellator. Where does he go from here? So what do you think, AK? I don't know if backlash is the word, or, I mean, how would you sort of gauge the reaction if Patricio Pitbull just goes out there and just runs through AJ McKee tonight?
I think I think among people who again are only who only kind of tune into Bellator every now and then, who are only now sort of getting into the AJ McKee hype, they're gonna if he falters in any way, they're gonna be very quick to just be like, another overhyped Bellator guy. I can't believe I tuned in for this, and this kid is, who did he really beat? And they'll start nitpicking his resume. So that's gonna happen no matter what with a certain segment of the fan base. But I like to think most people who have been watching and kind of keeping track of, even if just the Grand Prix, even if just following the Grand Prix, will know like Pitbull again might be the best featherweight in the world, depending who you ask. It's him, it's Volkanovski, it's Holloway. They're in that discussion together. So getting beaten by Pitbull, even in a fight that's expected to be close, there's no shame in it. Pitbull is that damn good. I am picking McKee, but I will not be disappointed if McKee loses. It's one fight. And on this day, you have how can you be disappointed if someone gets blown out or dominated by the champion? I don't expect it to happen, but for me, it won't make some grander statement about where AJ McKee is as a prospect. Win or lose, these two are going to fight again someday, probably at 155. So this is just the first chapter, but whoever wins, it'll be cool for them to get those bragging rights, get that first blood. But I really hope that for the most part, people who if McKee drops an egg today, that people aren't going to be like, can't believe I believed in this hype. No, he's that damn good, but so is Pitbull. So it won't say anything negative about either guy.
Jose, we've talked about Bellator promotion on all of our shows. Like, how do they do in terms of promoting in a fight and getting it on people's radars? I put out I always put out a question before these cards, like, what's the under the radar storyline heading into tonight's festivities? And I had a few people say that, surprisingly enough, Patricio Pitbull versus AJ McKee is one of those under the radar storylines because it's not getting the hype that a lot of people feel that this fight deserves. Do you agree with that sentiment? And if so, I mean, what else can they do? I feel like they've done a much better job promoting this one, but I think everyone just kind of knew it because they built it up for 2 years.
I mean, there's obviously things they could do, like bring them certain places, but in this pandemic era, it's hard to do that. Like, for like when they do the big Showtime boxing matches, like if they had AJ McKee Pitbull like sitting ringside and they like pan over to them, and they show them on the big screen and they're yelling at each other, like when they do like the when they do the WWE Hall of Fame around the ring and they keep cutting to the two opponents back and forth, like one side cheers, one side boos, and it's just fun. You can do stuff like that. You could have brought them to the forum a while ago. You could have brought them all over the place, but you can't really, especially considering Patricio Pitbull doesn't even live in the United States. He lives down in Brazil, so it's hard to say in this era. I think they're doing the best they can. Maybe Showtime could have got behind them if they can't get them physically at one of the boxing matches. Maybe they just plug this a lot more on their stuff because it's on. I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know what else they can do because their hands just might be tied.
And then to address the second part of the prior question, Jose, if Patricio Pitbull wins this fight and does so emphatically, what's next for him? Here's the options. Go back up to 155, defend the title. If Brent Primus wins, you could do that one. That feud's been brewing for a while. You could do a Grand Prix at 155. Or you could stick at 145. Or the other option, I feel like a bantamweight Grand Prix makes a ton of sense right now with all the talent they have there. Could Patricio Pitbull make the move to 135 and try for a third title?
I've been saying he looks more like a 135er than a 155er for years. It doesn't look like he breaks a sweat cut of 145 at all. AJ McKee clearly does. So if he wants to go to 135, so be it. I would favor him over everyone at 135 if he can make the weight healthy. Now, I think a fighter like Patricio Pitbull, Grand Prix favor him because he doesn't cut a ton of weight. He can fight frequently barring injuries. He can fight more frequently because he's not cutting a bunch of weight. So maybe I'd favor him in a lightweight tournament just because he can fight more often in that short stretch of time, because they usually try to do these Grand Prix in like between 12 and 18 months total, right? So that's a lot of fighting, especially for 5-round fights. 135, if you can make it comfortably, I would love to see it. There's like him versus Juan Archuleta, 135, him versus Sergio Pettis, him versus Gallagher, like all those fights are from. Or if he wants to go to 155, fight Brent Primus, or Peter Queally just beat his brother, I know there's controversy there. If they want to build storylines with the SBG squad, so be it. Then I don't know. There's a million things that Patricio Pitbull can do, and this whole what's better for business debate that I keep seeing. Everyone keeps saying, oh, AJ McKee, if he wins, it opens up more doors. I'm pretty confident that when people say business means making money. AJ McKee is going to be an expensive fighter. Like, he will be. He's already said it. Like, pay me what I'm worth. AJ McKee with both belts holds all the poker chips, and he's going to demand a lot of money. So if you're trying to build a star, AJ McKee is better for business. If you're trying not to pay out the nose to keep that star, Patricio Pitbull winning is better for business. So it just depends on how you look at it. But I'm not a host of On to the Next One, so I don't even have to think about this because I have no idea who's going to win.
Well, there you go. And we're probably not going to be talking about that anyway. We will mention it, of course. We got to pay due respect to Bellator and the card they're going to put on tonight. But what do you think, AK? I think that's a really interesting point that Jose brings up, because business means dollars and cents. That's pretty much the definition of this entire thing. And I know for a fact that Bellator is going to empty the piggy banks when Kayla Harrison becomes a free agent. They're going to go all in on her, and they should go all in on her. So is Patricio Pitbull, in terms of dollars and cents, is him winning the fight better for business? Like, not just opportunity and building future fights and future cards, but is this a better financial business thing to happen, Pitbull winning this fight over AJ McKee?
In a practical sense, everything Jose said is correct. It's true. Look, we are talking about, at some point you have to pay these people, and AJ McKee is going to cost a lot of money. But I do think, as the promoter, you always, in this particular situation, the way the Grand Prix has played out, I would think ideally you want that AJ McKee win. You want this to be the end of this particular part of his journey. He is, 17-0 now, all in Bellator. This is so rare. I'm trying to think of any other promotion at any level that has built a guy up to a championship level, and they started their career with that promotion. They have had complete control, as it were, over the arc of this guy's career since the very beginning. It really just doesn't happen. And I'm not criticizing any promotion that hasn't done it. By the nature of this sport, it's pretty much impossible to do. So this is a unique story. They would want AJ to win. He's the younger fighter. He's clearly the quote unquote future star. He's the current star, but he is the guy I would think to sort of lead the company into the next decade, into the 2030. But again, I'm looking pretty far ahead there. And Pitbull has a ton of matchups. He's an established guy, but I would think always you would, as a promoter, you would skew towards the new younger guy getting that W. But I don't think there's a wrong, as I kind of said before, I don't think there's a wrong outcome either way, other than knock on MMA wood, some horrific no contest or something. That's really, the worst thing that could happen. But as far as who wins the fight, there's ways to go both ways that could be good for Bellator.
I just want to say I put up the clock there because I'm seeing a lot of comments asking when's the first UFC fight start.
Yeah.
So,
well done.
There you go.
Who needs Casey Leydon after all?
There you
Jose's
go.
got a mustache, and it's a glorious one.
I just I can't play the drums, so there was a very interesting question that I saw that I can't find anymore, but it was can you think of a Contender Series alum? Oh, here you go. I found it. Speaking on the UFC card.
Has any other Contender Series
gosh.
alumni lost their first fight in the UFC and then get a co-main spot in their second fight? That is an interesting question.
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea.
I will do I'm going to do a little bit of research here, but we should say, in fairness to kind of how weird the situation is, that
Greg Hardy?
Yeah. Was he co-main?
Oh.
Was he co-main?
He's been like co-main in pretty much every card.
But he lost his first fight. Was he co-main his second fight? That's what I was thinking.
The Boston card, his second one?
No. No.
That would make sense.
He lost on the Brooklyn card, and I think his second fight was on the Sunrise card where he illegally it might have been the Boston card. I don't remember.
The first fight was the.
It was a co-main event. Yep, it was a co-main event.
Dmitry Smolyakov, at which point after Dana White said, how did that guy even get talking about Smolyakov? How'd that guy end up on our card, essentially? And I'm like, you signed him. That's how he ended up on your. Anyway, so there you go. There's your answer, Matt. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper here and see if there's anyone else. But Matt Hardy, Matt Hardy, big money, Matt Hardy. No, I'm sorry. Greg Hardy. I wish it was Matt Hardy instead. Greg Hardy, the obvious answer. But yeah, again, Cheyenne Bays and Gloria DePaula were not supposed to be the co-main. We've had like 6 co-mains fall out, it feels like. So, in fairness to them, they're just getting the spot and the chance to take advantage of it. But it's not like they were originally supposed to be in this position.
Usman Nurmagomedov is a minus 1,400 favorite over his opponent.
That's a good question.
Is that a fair betting odd, or does being a Nurmagomedov prospect play a role? Now, it's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting number. I'm not surprised that Usman is that big of a favorite. Manny's tough, man. Manny Murrow is a tough out. I mean, he's played spoiler many times throughout his career. He's had the ups, he's had the downs. He's talked about falling into depression, turning to alcoholism a little bit, being down in the dumps after going on a long losing streak, but he's since come back from that. He's found religion. He's very tight with his family, his kids. They're all motivation for him right now. And he's mentally in the best place he's ever been in his career. So I feel like, I'm not going to say he's a live dog, because I think that's a big stretch, but I feel like this line is a little out of whack. Like, you want to do minus 800, minus 900, I got no issue with that. I just feel like minus 1,400, second Bellator fight, I don't know, seems a little high to me. Your thoughts on this, AK?
These odds in Bellator are always insane. I always, Mike, my first thing I tell people is don't bet on MMA. But I'll say, if you're a casual bettor, someone who's always kind of throwing cash down on cards just to make it a little more interesting for yourself, anytime you see one of these minus 1,400, splash $5 on the other guy or whoever. He's a what's the other guy actually? Sorry, underdog.
Plus 850.
Plus splash $5 on him. Again, it can afford it. That's not just throw their money away. But these we've seen. I think if you look, I always tell, if you look at like the top 20 biggest upsets in MMA history, go to there's lists on Tapology or whatever. Like half of the list is weird Bellator fights where I think like 2 of them are like Kimbo Slice Jr.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the name means a lot. Usman definitely has had the skills to back it up. I think anyone who's watched him is like, okay, this guy looks like a future contender. But like Mike said, Manny's really tough. He's on a win streak. This is not a guy. This is not a quote unquote can that they have brought in that's just going to get. Presumably he's not just going to get smoked in like 30 seconds. He is a really tough fighter. The line doesn't surprise me, but only because this is really consistent with what happens with kind of these Bellator prospects when they start getting built up. So I do not think it's a fair betting odds, as the question's asking. The name has to do with it, yes, but also he's undefeated. His fighting style is very exciting. He's clearly very skilled, so he passes the eye test for sure. But in MMA, at this level, again, UFC, Bellator, PFL, LFA, even LFA level. Once you get to this level, it's really wild when anyone is with a somewhat limited track record, somewhat limited high-level track record, is a minus 1,400 favorite over someone else. Yeah, I'm just reading the comment. Yeah, I think that should be saved for like champions like Valentina Shevchenko, or if it's like a top 5 ranked fighter facing like a short notice opponent. Then I understand like minus 1,000, minus 1,200, favorite odds. But in this, where it's again, a guy who, yes, is undefeated, but we still don't know what his ceiling is, I find those odds just crazy. So don't splash $5 on Manny Murrow, or the opposite. Do not bet whatever $5,000 on Nurmagomedov, because I think those odds are always just a little bit too far.
Yeah, and listen, Usman is the real deal. I mean, Jose talked about this on a couple of different occasions, I think on the A side and maybe on the previous show yesterday. When people talk about him, like, they feel like he has the potential to be the guy, like the best Nurmagomedov when his career is over, even better than Habib. So we'll see what happens, man. He's not even. I thought Kazan Magomed Sharapov would be the biggest favorite on the card. He is not, although that is a hefty line too at minus 1125 right now against Jonathan Quiros, who comes back at plus 700. So what do you think of that betting line, Jose? I know you're not a big betting line guy, but are you surprised it's that high against a guy like Manny Murrow?
I know a lot of betting lines, they fluctuate when a lot of money comes in on someone. So maybe what it is, maybe that minus 1,400, minus 1,300 now is because people see that name, Usman Nurmagomedov, and maybe the line was a lot closer at the beginning. What was you're smiling now. What was the line? Am I just way off? I don't ever look at lines ever. So
the line for this fight opened on Monday.
Oh God.
9:30 p.m. Eastern time. Usman Nurmagomedov was a minus 400 favorite.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. So people probably said, oh, minus 400. His last name is Nurmagomedov. I'm going to throw a bunch of money on him. And then all of a sudden, odds makers were like, oh, we have to do something here. What if he loses? So like they made it that crazy. So, or you know what I mean. Like they want him. They don't. Too much money came in on Usman Nurmagomedov, so they made the odds that much crazier. And that's something John Anik always says. Like, when I asked him about, I think I asked him about like when Jessica Andrade was like a close favorite to Valentina, and he said he thinks it's because so much money came in on Valentina to win that they were trying to even the odds a bit. But don't know.
Within hours, it went from minus 400 to minus 750.
Yeah, people knew.
It went that high within minutes.
But the names, people be very careful betting on names in MMA. Like we said, Nurmagomedov, Kimbo Slice Jr., or I should say Kevin Ferguson Jr., excuse me. And then I'll never forget Hollis Gracie versus Joey Beltran. I don't know if you guys remember that fight. I think Beltran was probably like plus 700, plus 800 underdog. It was Gracie's first and only UFC fight. And he dropped like the biggest stink bomb of a performance I had ever seen. I can't imagine anyone who bet on Hollis Gracie at that time. Because he literally rolled over in the second round, had no gas left, and was just punched out into oblivion. So this again, and this is very few people had probably ever seen him fight in MMA, and just based on his name, and I guess no one had ever heard of Joey Beltran at the time either. Hollis Gracie was just this massive again. I think Beltran's something plus 700, plus 800 underdog, and don't bet on names. Okay, names do not win fights.
That's a good point. Being undefeated doesn't necessarily mean you're better than the other guy. Charlie Olives has lost plenty, and he's better than a lot of lightweights with less losses on the record. So, good point.
Artem Lobov recently retired. Let me tell you something. He's got a worse record than pretty much everyone at this level, at the highest levels of MMA. Guess what? He's tougher than all of them.
Yes, Usman Nurmagomedov is that's a big name.
Very powerful.
It's a lot of weight. I spoke with Usman earlier this week. I think his mentality, the way he's approaching this fight and the rest of his career is the way he needs to. Like, he's not overconfident. He says he knows he'll get into the rankings at some point. He'll get his opportunity, but he's only 23 years old. There's no rush. And I think that's a good way to approach it. Yep. I think we talked about this yesterday, but it is Dr. Alan Grant after all.
We've talked about this a lot, but I've seen like 4 or 5 questions, like all asking similar, not the phrase the same, but all similar. So I figure we address it now.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to talk about it more, and I'll also address. I know poor Joseph Boza has been spamming this question since yesterday for the past 48 hours. So Joseph was also asking, like, did so much of kind of the negative attitude towards Nicco stem from the fact that even at the time they thought Valentina Shevchenko should have been the champion. Valentina, she never really dropped the belt to Valentina. So like, did she kind of ruin that moment with some, not being able to fight? So there's kind of I'll address both these in this. Yeah, it should be the end of her as a UFC fighter for her own good. Like you said, Mike, we talked about before, but she needs a breath of fresh air. She needs to get away from the pressure and the spotlight of being a UFC fighter. She needs to go to like an LFA. She needs to go to a smaller promotion and just build that confidence back. Clearly, she's a talent. She won that first season of The Ultimate Fighter. She beat some very good, more experienced competition. Call it luck. Call it whatever you want. She did it. There is obviously potential there as a fighter. And I do think she's been through a lot. I do think sometimes there is such a thing as just having bad fortune when it comes to injuries, and she got COVID-19, and so there's a pile of excuses for things that went wrong with Nicco, for why fans never took a liking to her, maybe even turned on her despite not even fighting. Her inactivity seems to have rubbed fans the wrong way. So again, there's a pile of excuses, but I do think there's at least 1 or 2 valid ones in there, and but I think for her own good, Dr. Alan Grant, that she needs to get away. She needs to get away from here and just become a free agent. Go pursue something else. Maybe take a break from even trying to be a fighter for a bit. Get your health right. Get your whatever the situation is with her, because it has been really rough for her and for her opponents, as we pointed out in another show. So shout outs to Wu Yanan, who again was in a difficult position. And I was a little disappointed though that Nicco didn't mention Wu Yanan in her statement she put on Instagram, but there could have been a private apology. So
there was. Did you? See, I'm not sure. And apologies for the audio levels. Okay, I'm doing 1,000 things at once here. Everyone keeps saying my mic is blown out, and then half of people are saying it's too low. So I'm doing 1,000 things here. But
sure.
Did you guys see that she's working on that documentary?
Yes.
Now, someone that was running the Facebook page for that documentary posted this weight cut will like this will show like I don't remember the exact phrasing, but it seemed very much like they knew this was happening.
Huh.
And this was a lot of it was for show for the documentary. Like they missed weight to show how the UFC tries to make them cut weight. Now, I don't know the exact phrasing, and I don't know if that is exactly what happened, but the phrasing was very odd. It did sound weird to miss by that much for a bantamweight fight. Now, again, I have absolutely no idea if that's the case or what I'll try to find the phrasing while you guys talk amongst yourselves. All right, someone in the comment brought it up.
Even when MMA Fighting wrote about Nicco's documentary coming out, people are so pissed that she didn't drop the women's flyweight to Valentina. I always thought Nicco was a 145er struggling in the UFC.
I don't know about that. Like I said, she made 125 inside the Tough House multiple times. Yeah. So, and again, look, that was years ago. People change, bodies change, but I don't. Nothing about seeing her. Just go from my eye test. Nothing about me says that she's a natural 145er. Would it be more comfortable for her to compete at that weight? Sure, but I don't think 135 is a bridge too far for her. She also made that when she fought Juliana Pena.
This is what the Facebook page Warrior Spirit UFC champ Nicco Montaño documentary. That's what the Facebook page is called. I'm reading this verbatim, so with all spelling mistakes as well. Nicco Montaño missed weight by 7 pounds this morning. This is why our documentary, Warrior Spirit, will be one of the most docs of the year and help implement safety protocols around extreme weight cutting in the UFC. So if their whole thing was to try and implement safe weight cutting in the UFC, it's weird that they would put it out less than 24 hours. Like that statement was less than 24 hours after Nicco missed weight. I'm not saying that's what I have absolutely no idea. I'm not saying that, but it is worded very weirdly.
Uh-huh.
That's wild, man. And especially, like, I know in her statement and other, like, social media posts, she shouted out the UFC PI for all their help and all their assistance. So this would be it's just weird. Very inconsistent.
I think Nicco's time with the UFC is over for now. I don't think the Nicco UFC story is over. This part of the story might just be beginning.
Maybe Nicco can fight Kayla 155.
She's not, again, she'd be much smaller than Kayla. I think Kayla would look huge.
All right. Moving on from Nicco talk because none of us know what went on with their camp.
Is Sean Strickland set to continue his run at 185, or is Uriah Hall going to be able to put it together mentally? I feel, and we talked about this a little bit on the preview show yesterday, just talking, I've spoken to Uriah Hall 3 times in my life. Once, it did not go well. Second time was a little bit better, but it was in a situation where he did like probably 15 consecutive interviews, and I happened to be like either 14 or 15. So it went okay, but not tremendously. I didn't really get a lot out of him because he was just kind of over it. But the third time was the one that stuck out to me the most because I don't do 45-minute interviews that often. That one went 45, and he talked for like 32 of them. And I enjoyed it. I felt mentally he was in a great space. I felt like he kind of took ownership for a lot of the, the problems he had in his UFC come up, the pressures that weighed upon him. I feel like he is in a much better place. I feel like he's joking around a little more. You saw it at the media day. I mean, if you ask him it's a terrible question, he's going to call you out on it. But for the most part, he's much more giving of his time to members of the media, so forth and so on. So I feel like mentally he's in a great place. I am with you from what you said yesterday, AK, and maybe I'll have you elaborate on that more. I feel like Uriah Hall needs this way more than Sean Strickland does. I feel like Sean Strickland can come back and fight in a month. Like, he's one of those guys that just wants to scrap, man. I don't know if titles are what's on his mind. I don't know if fighting Israel Adesanya is on his mind, but Uriah Hall has talked about all of those things. I feel like he needs this a lot more. You're in agreement with that. Why do you feel that is? Why do you feel like this is a fight that Uriah Hall just has to win and the pressure's not as much on Sean Strickland?
I mean, it's not even just all about Uriah Hall. Like, Sean Strickland is playing with house money. This guy was not on anybody's like contender radar a year ago or 16 months ago. He just kind of came up to 185. Had a really great, sorry, I should say return to 185. Excuse me. Had a really great first fight back. Super entertaining fighting style. Had the benefit of the Apex environment where he could talk all he wanted, and even if you weren't watching the fight, you were kind of like, We're like, what the hell's going on right now? Like, who's this Sean Strickland? So a lot of people were reintroduced to Sean Strickland for the first time. Anyway. So he got a second chance to make a first impression, considering he's been fighting for a while. So, and that's great. A lot of fighters do not get that chance. This is almost, again, like a first run for him at 185, even though he has fought in the division before. So that's why, win or lose, it feels like a temporary setback for him. He'll bounce back, get some more big fights. Brendan Allen keeps calling him out. That rematch is always there. He has all these other options. Uriah Hall is 36, 37 years old, and we've had all these stops and starts. We've had all these, Uriah's becoming a contender. No, he lost this fight. He's coming back to being a contender again. He lost this fight. He lost 2 fights in a row. Lost 3 out of 4 fights. Uriah's never going to get it together. And I'm one of the people right now who's very convinced that he has gotten it together. And I don't know if he gets a chance like this again to build this kind of run that has like a Chris Weidman on it. It has Anderson Silva on it. Like if this leads to a title shot, you'll look at these past 4, 5, 6 fights, however many fights it takes, and be like, that is a #1 contender's resume. And I don't know if at this stage of his career he ever gets the chance to go on a run like this again. So this is, for me, is his moment to. I honestly think one fight away, because Izzy's done a pretty good job of cleaning out much of the middleweight contenders. I think Uriah would be a great matchup.
Yeah, the story's right there. What are your thoughts on this, Jose? Is this all? I mean, is this like all or nothing for Uriah Hall right now? Is this the quote unquote must win more on his end than it is for Sean Strickland?
I think it outside of winning and losing, he needs a really good performance. Just because we don't have a lot of tape on him in the last 18, 24 months, just because a lot of his fights have fallen out, or the Chris Weidman situation happens, or he's fighting Anderson Silva. And yes, beating Anderson Silva is a big deal, and I think that victory kind of it looks a lot better than it did at the time, especially after Anderson's performance in his boxing debut. But you're still beating a 40-something-year-old Anderson Silva in front of no one on Halloween. It just if inside in a small octagon. So I remember when Dana would always complain about Uriah and kind of throw him under the bus a lot. And then remember that fight he had against Paulo? That fight absolutely ruled. Uriah Hall, Paulo Costa. They just stood in the phone booth and just threw everything at each other. I'm not saying to go out there and stand in the phone booth with Sean Strickland. I'm saying he needs just a good performance in general to just remind people that he is an incredibly high-level fighter, because I don't think people remember, and I think people think of when we bring up the fact that, Uriah could make a run at the title, people laugh at us because they remember all like the weird fights that, like, remember he almost lost to Krzysztof Jotko. Like, he got smoked that first round, and then he knocked Jotko dead in that one punch. Which is, I wanted to bring up in the preview show. It's just like people say, like, Sean Strickland could just pitter-patter him the whole time. I'm like, dude, Uriah Hall can lose a lot of rounds and then just come back and smoke you. He has that ability. Like, he was losing to Mousasi, and then he caught him with a spinning back kick to the face.
I thought he was losing to Anderson Silva.
So was I. Like, Uriah Hall is an incredibly exciting is he mentally strong outside of the octagon? I don't know. I think at this point in time, after your interview and after our media day in Jacksonville, I can confidently say him at Fortis MMA has greatly benefited him mentally, and I want to see him if that translates into his fighting style. So win or lose, I'm not going to talk about that, but I just think he needs a strong performance against a high-level middleweight.
Just looking at his Tapology page right now, he loses to Robert Whittaker, who's now the champion. Then he was supposed to fight Anderson Silva in May of 2016. Fight gets called off. Then he has to fight Derek Brunson. Derek Brunson was on a good run at that point. Gegard Mousasi, arguably second, third best middleweight in the world. The Jotko fight. Then he's supposed to fight Vitor Belfort. That would have been another nice name to put on the resume. Probably would have been favored in that fight. Mm-hmm. Then Paulo Costa fight gets pushed past 3 months. They have that crazy fight and he loses. Then he fights Lewis. Then he fights Shoeface, gets wins. Then he's supposed to fight Jacare. Then he's supposed to fight Jacare again. Then he's supposed to fight Yoel Romero. I mean, these are big fights for him. Fights Anderson Silva, gets the finish. Then he's supposed to fight Chris Weidman in February. COVID happens. Weidman's out. Fights Weidman 2 months later. We all know what happens. So this guy, from a mental perspective, has gone through a lot. Yeah. A lot of top switch-ups and, different emotional things. So we'll see. I mean, I feel like the answer to this question we'll have a better gauge of it tonight. If he goes out there and just forgets all of that and goes out there and starches Sean Strickland, then we're like, all right, this dude's in a good spot. Can Strickland's mindset of not caring about belts and status still build fans for him? UFC trusts that with headlining cards in the Will the UFC trust that with headlining cards in the future?
Yes.
What do you think, Jose?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. It's what happened with Cowboy's a star. He didn't care about belts for the longest time. Like, who is the biggest star in the heavyweight division right now? And I don't think it's Francis Ngannou. I think it's Derek Lewis. I think Derek Lewis, no matter whenever he talks, is just everyone listens. He has like Joe Rogan shouts him out on. He gains like 400,000 Instagram followers overnight. Derek Lewis is one of I would say 10 biggest fan favorites in MMA. He don't give an F about belts. He just wants to get paid. And he just wants to fight all the time. So there you go. I think that's the answer. Sean Strickland, I think, is not nearly as quick-witted as Derek Lewis is. But I think if Cowboy can do it and a lot of these other fighters can do it, I think why not Sean Strickland?
Yeah. Another guy who really doesn't care about. I mean, he wants. I mean, it doesn't hurt.
Everyone. No one's gonna say. No one's gonna say no to belts.
Yeah, Max Holloway's another guy. Just wants to fight a tough fight. Plays video games. Doesn't watch MMA on the side.
Not only does he play video games. Have you ever watched one of his Facebook gaming streams? Like, have you watched one?
Yeah.
If you bring up MMA, the mods ban you.
Yeah. I heard you get one question. I heard you get one.
Maybe.
I've
seen people get banned with it. They're like, "Oh, who do you think is gonna win?" And then he gets banned. I think that's funny.
No, that's
good. Good for him, man.
Yeah. With respect though to Bula about whatever question, I think more specifically he's asking, can the UFC trust him with headlining cards in the future? Because I agree with you guys. Well, for one thing, belts and rankings guys do not create stars. This is proven. Belts and where the UFC chooses to rank guys has nothing to do with someone becoming a star. Nate Diaz, I mean, again, you guys said Cerrone. Derek Lewis, you said, was another good example. A guy I despise, Mike Perry. Mike Perry's never going to come close to a UFC title. I think he's maybe been ranked in the top 15, and he has like this huge following, which is absurd, but again, what does it matter? But as far as the question of can he be trusted to headline cards, I do wonder if the UFC does care a lot though about fighters at least kind of helping to, that narrative that titles are the most important things and they're needed if you're going to be a main eventer. So there is some merit to the question. Again, I think he can become a very popular fighter and a star. How will his relationship with the matchmakers and with Dana White and whoever else makes decisions up there at the UFC, how will his current attitude affect how they book him going forward? That's a good question, because they could just see him as an action guy, as a main card opener guy or a co-main event guy, and never give him that push towards the title, unless, of course, he rattles off 6, 7, 8 straight wins. But he might not be the kind of guy who can like come off of 2 wins and get a title shot, unlike some other perhaps more more company-minded fighters.
Strickland, a minus 225 favorite heading into tonight. Some money coming in on Mr. Strickland. Come back on Uriah Hall, plus 185. Kevin Holland is an interesting example as well. Man just wants money. Kevin Holland wants to be paid. I'm
worried that Kevin Holland spends a lot of money on a lot of things when he's not fighting. Like,
he does.
It's absurd. Like,
he does. He told me he doesn't even care.
Before
I even came out with MMA fighting, I think one of the last interviews I did was with Kevin Holland, and he was supposed to fight on one of the pandemic cards, like one of the cards that got canceled by the pandemic. And he's just like, I don't care. I'll fight again someday. Like, I get the money and I spend the money. They'll come back. I'll get more money. And he was right. Went 5-0. Once the Kings came back, he probably made more money than he ever has in his life. So good on him.
Oh, interesting question. Oh.
When everything happened today for UFC on ESPN 28, what were your thoughts on Cheyenne versus Gloria being the new co-main event? What fight would they have put in that place? I don't know if there is another fight you put in that place. I mean, maybe Brian Barberina, Jason Witt, because I think people know who Brian Barberina is, and I'm not saying they know who his other two.
I do want that fight is still happening. I saw one person spamming our comments asking if that fight was still on.
Oh, the Barberina fight?
Yeah.
Definitely happening. That's gonna be
it's such a great opener though, Barberina and Witt, right? Like it makes so much sense as an opener. I really have no issue with them not bumping it up to the co-main. You know me, guys. I still think Jinyu Fry and Ashley Yoder should have been on the main card in the first place over Cheyenne Bays and Gloria DePaula. We did talk about how Cheyenne has the kind of personality and sort of the mic skills that the UFC loves. She's from the, so there's a reason. She's from the Contender series. There's a reason why they might want to kind of promote her. But Fry is a former Invicta champion. I think that's something they could have pushed. She's a veteran. And again, she beat Gloria DePaula. I feel like she should be on the main card. So honestly, I even think Fry Yoder might have been. I'm probably in the minority here. Might have made more sense as a main card co. I mean, the UFC didn't even think it was a main card fight, so probably out to lunch here.
Yeah, well, I mean, we know the answer to this question. It's because Dana White and the UFC brass, they feel like Cheyenne Buys can become a star for them. She's got the gift of gab. She's an exciting fighter. She's got a very exciting style. I mean, if I'm Gloria DePaula, I'm bulldogging her the entire fight. Like, I'm throwing her in a side headlock and taking her to the ground. And
there was a comment asking if her opponent should have just immediately go for a headlock, but I can't find it.
Yeah, I mean, Cheyenne on the feet is very, very good. She's a little cray cray in there, and that's a good thing. It's fan friendly. If Pitbull wins against McKee and then leaves for the UFC, how much of a hit would it be for Bellator?
Oh, John
Massive.
K.
Massive.
Heat.
If he wins, if their champ leaves, anytime a champ leaves, it's gonna be a blow, because he never lost. It's like when Habib retires, the question is always like, oh, he never beat Habib. How would Habib do this? That name always haunts you. It's like Hakeem Olajuwon. Like, oh, if Michael Jordan was playing, you wouldn't have 2 rings, which is silly, but that's always going to be there. So if Pitbull leaves as champ, that's massive for the UFC and a massive blow for Bellator.
And I also think
I'll
go to you in a second, okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
No, I honestly, I think that this card is constructed the way that it's constructed for the, I'm not gonna say fear, but for the very strong possibility that either one of these two guys could be gone. Mm-hmm. Like in the next 2 years, like if we're looking at 2023, what are the chances either of these guys are here? You know what I mean? And that's kind of why this card is constructed as such, because this is a potential star building main card for them. Is it not, AK? And what's your thoughts on this? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, I like what you said there. That they've put other names on there. So hopefully there'll be some eyeballs on Mamedov and Usman Nurmagomedov and or Brent Primus. Maybe Brent Primus has a nice performance. I shouldn't say this is like it's a showcase fight for Mamedov, but it's not just the Pitbull leaving thing. It's John K. Fraser's question, right? It's imagine he just like knocks AJ McKee out, the chosen one, just smokes him inside of a round or something, or wins just a lopsided decision and then leaves. That is about as close to a worst case scenario as you can imagine. I said earlier, I would hope that whatever happens to AJ McKee, let's say he just drops a stink bomb tonight for whatever reason, loses, it doesn't diminish what he's done ahead of that and how people should view him as a prospect. But in that scenario where he doesn't get to avenge, let's say that loss, if it happens in that way, devastating to AJ McKee, devastating to Bellator. So John K., why would you even bring this up? What a horrible what a horrible scenario for Bellator. That's maybe the worst thing that could happen. Massive hit. Yeah.
That's not the worst that could happen. It'd be pretty bad.
Outside of the eye poke, outside of the Aljo Piotr Jan eye poke finish.
Pitbull getting COVID right now would be pretty terrible.
I mean, we're talking about if the fight happens. I think cancellation is the worst.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting too is that when the UFC snags these guys from Bellator, and we saw it with Michael Chandler, they just promote him. Michael Chandler but Michael Chandler, before he even stepped foot in the octagon to fight, was a bigger star than he was at any point with Bellator. It's crazy, and he didn't even fight. Like, he just showed up as a backup fighter for a title fight on Fight Island like a month after he signed, and he was immediately a bigger star than he ever was in Bellator. It's just crazy.
Similar with Ben Askren. They gave him a huge fight on a huge card. They know how to market specific individuals when they hop over, but they didn't do the same thing with Manel Cape. No. I know Manel got the backup spot again for the Figueiredo Moreno fight, but that was kind of because his opponents kind of fell out and he wanted to stay on the card and get paid, so he made weight as a quote-unquote backup, but Dana White didn't even know who he was when I asked him. And then Will Brooks fought Ross Pearson in his UFC debut, and he was the champ. Like, he left. He never lost. So they know how to market very specific individuals.
If McKee wins, is he the Bellator GOAT, AK?
No, come on. It's no. He'd still be behind Pitbull and Michael Chandler, maybe even Ryan Bader if you guys depending on how much weight you guys put in the light
If
heavyweight.
McKee wins,
heavyweight
if McKee wins, I put him third or fourth.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Third or fourth. I think Bader's the other argument. I think Bader's done a great job. Probably forgetting some Bellator originals, so I apologize for that. But it's definitely
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Hector Lombard.
Yeah. No, I would put Bader above him.
Really?
I definitely put Bader above Hector. Hector, I don't remember how many title defenses he actually managed to have. He didn't go on like a crazy ass like dominant run. If anything, like Shlemenko might have had a better Bellator career. If you're not counting head to head, if you're just saying like who had a long career with Bellator, maybe Shlemenko. But no, I like what Bader's done. Maybe again recency bias, so I put him up there. But I'd probably put McKee above him and in the top three.
I put him third.
What
about What about Douglas?
I was just gonna ask.
Lima.
Douglas Lima. Yeah.
Douglas Lima to me right now. Douglas Lima is third, right now.
Sure. And I don't know if McKee winning would put him above Lima either, because the body work is not quite there yet.
Yeah. He also if he avenged his loss to Rory. If he avenges his loss to, I can't pronounce. I'm not gonna try to pronounce the last name off the top of my head.
Amosov.
Yes. So we'll see.
He's lost 2 in a row, man. I mean, this fight with Michael Page is massive for him. Big.
The argument for McKee would definitely be that he has had all his fights with Bellator, which again, as we said before, no other fighter can say. So that would be the argument there, but not quite yet. But he's well on his way. Sure. Ask again in 2 years, could be the clear-cut Bellator greatest.
AJ is what Pico was supposed to be.
We talked about this on the A side.
Yeah, I dig the Celtics logo, but I don't know if I quite like that.
That's the worst part of this comment.
All right, I'm just going through a lot of comments unrelated to the fight, so I'm trying to.
Yeah, we got 7.5 minutes. Around 7.5 minutes ago.
I hope Pitbull does. I really need to see Pico and Pitbull someday. If Pitbull beats, if Pitbull beats AJ McKee, I really need to see Pico. He's not close to that opportunity yet of either fighting Pico or AJ McKee, whoever wins tonight. But man, I really hope people have been following him since those first few growing pains fights. Some of their wins, some losses. He is I would call it Pico one of the. It might be a stretch. Maybe one of the 10 most exciting fighters in MMA. That dude is. Oh my gosh! Like the potential is just there, and the finishes are there. Everything every now and then he has these moments where all the biggest, most hyped prospect in all MMA history. You see why, and I still think he can get there. We're a ways away, but that's something I see in the future for the Bellator featherweight title.
His skill set is unbelievable.
It's amazing.
Seeing it live, like 10 feet away, you get a whole new respect for the man.
God, so
one issue he has though is that chin, man. That's the question that everybody has.
Defense.
He goes in there because he called out Adam Borch, who's getting ready to fight in a number 1 contender fight after his last win, and a lot of people that I was in that room with, and I won't name names, but not a lot of them have a lot of faith that Aaron Pico would win that fight against Adam Borch, just because all it takes is one, man. We'll see if that chin's improved, but we got to put him in there with a guy who can absolutely crack.
You think Aaron Pico could just do what Darren Caldwell did though? Just double leg him. Aaron Pico is a very good wrestler.
Oh yeah, I mean, look what he did this last fight, and that guy was no. But I mean, Pico's just a dangerous man. He's a bad man with JAMA. 6 minutes to go.
Here you go, guys.
Can you point out some other good fights to look for on the Bellator card? AK, you want to begin with it? You want to begin this one?
I want
Kaysan Magomed Sharipov.
One from each.
Yeah. Wait, from each. What do you mean from? From each of us?
Yeah, from each of you.
Kaysan Magomed Sharipov. I've seen. He's only 5-0, so it's not like there's a lot of footage. But I've seen some of his highlights doing missed fists. He looks awesome. I mean, he's the brother of Zabit, but that's not his only selling point. He's his own man. He's got great wrestling, great submission skills. Again, 5-0. Who knows how good he'll actually be? They've given him a favorable opponent, a guy with a below 500 record, but that will be on the prelims. So that for me is there's other more competitive fights for sure. I'm not saying this is fight of the night. I'm saying this is a showcase. Should be a showcase for Kaysan, but that's the one I would tell people to keep an eye on. There are some great competitive fights though.
What are you going with, Jose?
If I had to, if outside the main event, I don't know. Your Brent Primus interview was fun, so like I don't know.
That's a good fight.
Probably the Brent Primus fight. I'm a big fan of him. I'm a big fan of his interviews. he's a good fighter, but I get more hyped up for his interviews than his fights.
Yeah, man, he was on fire. I'm gonna dig a little deeper. And AK, I think you'll appreciate this. Georgie Karkanyan versus new James Krause students, Kiefer Crosby.
Oh, is he?
Yes.
Bet the farm on Crosby.
Glory MMA's own Kiefer Crosby. So that'll be fun. There's a few good ones on here. I mean, the co-main event's real good.
Who's Chris Gonzalez fighting? I always like watching him fight too.
Goichi Yamauchi.
Yeah.
That's a good fight.
Dude, this card isn't like, sometimes I think people think when we say, oh, a Bellator card is better than a UFC card, we're saying like because this UFC card is relatively weak, compared to most UFC cards, and this Bellator card is relatively stronger than most Bellator cards. No, I think in a void, if you put these head to head, I understand the name value isn't there for some of these guys, but that's just how powerful the branding is of the UFC. Like we said, you have guys come from Contender Series, other promotions connected with the UFC, and people just keep up with the UFC news more. But Karakhanyan Crosby is a sick fight. Jordan, I'm gonna Winsky. Great regional fighter is debuting. He's the opener. What else am I looking at? Rabadanov is a great fighter. He used to fight he was with PFL. He's a really good fighter. Porto Joan is the prelim headliner. That's a great fight. So this card in a void, I'm not saying relative to Bellator and UFC relative to UFC. I'm saying if you stack these cards up, the Bellator card is stronger. And it's probably not that bold of a statement given what happened to the UFC card.
I think Chris Gonzalez too. To go back to him, I think he was 1-0 when he signed with Bellator, and he just beat Roger Huerta. So he's on. Mm-hmm. He's kind of on. These next few fights will decide whether he's legit or not. I remember I interviewed him before his Bellator debut. I think it was his Bellator debut on the Chicago card. It was the Chandler Pitbull card. Also had Lima MVP and Pat Curran, Pat. Had Pitbull, AJ McKee, MVP Lima, and who did Jake Hager fight? You know the guy that worked in like the meat place.
That JW, that wasn't Kaiser, was it? No, it wasn't Kaiser. It was
TJ something.
Jones?
Maybe. I don't remember.
I gotta look this up.
But it was that card, and they did a prelim fight media day in the hotel room, and Chris Gonzalez made it known that he was. The second he made his MMA debut, I think this was his phrasing. Someone goes, he said, the second I made my pro debut, the conversation of best wrestler in MMA was put to an end, and I was like, oh, okay, guy.
Excellent.
He was 1-0 in MMA. I was like, well, I'm not gonna forget that. So all power to you.
He's a classic alpha male product guy. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to like pigeonhole him, but he comes from alpha male, squat, powerful guy. Excellent wrestling. It's a nice claim to make, I think.
Yeah, it was good. Like
TJ Jones, by the way.
It was TJ Jones. Oh my God, Tombstone Jones. That was his name.
Tombstone Jones.
Because he walked out with because you know how Bellator has like the big LED screen behind him and everything. He walked out. There's like a bunch of like 3D tombstones going about, and I saw when he did the press conference stuff, he had like the. Not the best hair, and he looked very sweaty. He just didn't look like he just kind of looked fun. He looked like he came right from work, like doing manual labor and went right to the press conference. And there were a lot of comments about him on YouTube. And then the next day, he shaved his beard and got a clean haircut, and John McCarthy was livid.
That's so
he's
funny.
Like, don't ever let the comments make them change who you are. F that. People were talking about you. That's all that matters. And I was like, wow.
Guys, I don't think we've said one word about the Bellator co-main event, Mads Burnell and Emmanuel Sanchez. That's a great fight. That's a better fight.
You can go watch.
That's a better co-main than Cheyenne Bays and Gloria DePaula. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that. Two awesome grapplers. You're going to see some wicked scrambles, or one of those fights where the grappling neutralizes each other, and they can both pop a bit on the feet. So awesome co-main event. Love Emmanuel Sanchez versus Mads Burnell.
Ake Lee is on the run for the 2021 sexiest MMA man alive. There you go.
Sexist. Nope. Sexist.
Sexist?
Oh no! What did I do? Oh, I was like, oh, you know what? I criticized the UFC co-main event. Yeah. All right. Chill, P. Ortiz. You got me.
I mean, it was an Ortiz. So it could have been a misspelling for sure. Yeah. Do I simply need Showtime to watch Bellator tonight, or do I need an additional subscription? You simply need Showtime. It's not a pay-per-view, so you're good.
Well,
premium content, unless you're in Canada.
I was about to say, move to Canada. Come up to Canada. Come on, across the border.
All right, we have, as you can see, we're at 000. Real quick, rapid fire, a la NFL pre-game shows. Oh, most sexist. Okay, I guess you are most sexist. Okay,
it's a thing now. This is all right. Great. It's my birthday.
Damn it!
I'm the most sexist.
All right, what are you saying, Mike?
All right, rapid fire. AK, Uriah Hall, Sean Strickland. Who you got?
Hall.
Jose.
Uriah, round 3.
I'm going Hall as well. Cheyenne Bays, Glory DePaula, AK.
DePaula.
Bays.
Bays as well. AJ McKee or Patricio Pitbull, AK.
McKee.
Jose.
Pitbull.
I'm going Pitbull as well. Manuel Sanchez, Mads Burnell, Jose.
Burnell.
AK.
Sanchez.
I'm going Sanchez as well. There you have it. Enjoy the fights, everybody. UFC is about to kick off. Lots of MMA action for you.
We'll be on the post show. Casey will be on site, so watch for all of our post fight interviews from Bellator. That's right. That's how you end it.
For Jose, for AK, the Prince of Positivity, not sexist. Happy birthday, AK. I am Mike Heck. Enjoy. We'll see you guys later on.